Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live. Eric's still muted. Eric's talking to me while I go live. I guess I didn't give him enough lead up, but it's off-season mode. We're in off-season mode, so you got an Olshey interview today that we're going to touch on, and we're going to chill, all right? These streams should be a little chill. Let me make sure I unmute Eric. There you go. Yeah, what's going on? Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're enjoying your Monday. Hope you're enjoying the off-season. You had a couple NBA games earlier today. The Suns just took care of business, so shout out to Valley Pod, guys. The Suns took care of the Denver Nuggets, kind of dominated them in the second half, did all the things that I wish we did. But, you know, season's over. New coach. Got some things to look forward to. So the main topic for today is just going to be Olshey's interview. I want to kind of go in depth on some things that were said. You have a lot of Blazer fans that are up in arms, Eric, about what Olshey had to say. And I kind of get it. Some of it I don't get. Mm-hmm. I didn't really have a problem with it. We'll get into that. But first, how's your day going, man?
Oh, not too bad. Just hung out with the family, did some work stuff, and yeah, I'm ready to talk. I'm really interested to hear your point of view. People that watch the channel know I'm probably more. I wouldn't say I'm like a Olshey apologist, but like I'm fairly pro Olshey. I think he's done a good job. You're a little more balanced, I think. So I was really interested to see how you reacted to some of these answers.
Yeah. My stance on Olshey, we're just going to lead off with this. This offseason's big, all right? Honestly, how I feel about Olshey is just going to be dependent on this offseason because he's had bad offseasons in years prior. He's had good offseasons. I think people have underrated some of his good offseasons because of the coach he had in place. So now we're fixing the coaching issue. So his offseason is going to be hiring the coach, and then whatever trades he makes, we're not going to have anything more than the taxpayer mid-level exception, so we're not going to be a huge player in free agency. So it's basically just going to be whatever trades he makes and whoever he hires as coach. It's a huge offseason. So if he doesn't get it right, I think this will be his last year as GM. If he does get it right, I think he could be here long term, and we'll have to wait and see. So I think now he's the one who's on the hot seat. He doesn't have the Stotts excuse next year. So I'm just going to wait and see. I'm not hating on him. I'm not, crazy supportive over him. We're just going to wait and see how things go for Olshey. And I think a lot of people are kind of in that boat, but you definitely have some people that have been harsher and don't like him. And I kind of get where they're coming from. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I kind of see, the used car salesman shtick and all that type of stuff. So I can see it. But I feel like people kind of overreacted to today, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, I think if you don't like him, obviously all his answers probably were like nails on a chalkboard to you, and you didn't want to hear any of that stuff. Yeah, the thing I'll say is, you could argue this is maybe wasting a year of Dame's prime. I don't agree with that, but at the same time, if this truly is a roster problem, we're going to find out really quick, in my opinion. And it'll be apparent next year that nothing's changed, even with a completely different style. Now, the problem is, new coach, you do need a little bit of grace period. Unlike, I feel like, with Stotts, who he's had the same systems. He didn't change much. He said he was going to, didn't really. I don't believe there's that big of a learning curve to learn his system or whatever. It's not that hard to just stand in the corner while Dame and Nurk run pick and roll, or to run drop scheme is a really basic defense to know how to do. To switch on picks when you shouldn't. That's really easy to do. All that kind of stuff. So, I believe it's just a case of, I think a new coach is going to show a lot more than people believe. And this is coming from two people who, I'm not trying to say told you so, but we've been right about Stotts all along, way before most people, including most of the people who are up in arms over Olshey today. we've been right about the problems with this team and why they aren't going to change under Stotts. And they came to fruition this year against a very beatable team like the Denver Nuggets. Now, if you want to get into arguments on whether or not this is a championship roster beyond that, it's hard for me to say like yes or no firmly. Like, sure, they do need more talent to be a championship contender. But a better coach, better record, better starts to the season, better defense out of your stars, and all of a sudden a guy like Dame is more thought of as an MVP because he's a more well-rounded player because our defense isn't completely terrible with him. And then you have guys like CJ whose value might be as an all-star level versus, because like there's a lot of teams, take Utah, for example, had 3 all-stars this year because they were the first seed. Like Conley's stats weren't good enough to be an all-star, and he was an injury replacement, but he was only an all-star because they had the best record in the West at the time of the all-star game. Whereas Portland has had a very bad record a lot of the times when it came to all-star voting and stuff like that, and only turned it on towards the end of seasons and made the playoffs or moved up in the seedings late in the season with a deep run after the all-star game took place. So you combine all those things, and like the trade value of a CJ would be better if he was better coached and the team had more success, things like that. So it's not just about having value in terms of whether it's a championship roster or not. It's also about the value of the players on your team if they're used differently and not thought of as like a Derek Jones, for example. If he's used in a way that like brings out his talent, he might actually have some value at a $10 million contract or whatever to trade this offseason. But instead, we bench him and he has no role and everyone thinks he sucks and he's the problem. So he has no value in a trade other than an expiring contract. So it's little things like that go from, having a roster like everyone wants all these players from Utah and Phoenix now because they're the 1 and 2 seeds and they're a good team and they think if they pluck a player from that team, they're really good, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas Portland, we lost to freaking Campazzo and Austin Rivers and Monte Morris and stuff in the playoffs. Like players aren't gonna like value like or think that those players are really valuable under that kind of coaching situation. And then also like players aren't necessarily going to want to come and team up with Dame if he's always losing in the first round or whatever, and they don't think they would make a big enough difference. And so I just think there's a lot of factors there, and I don't think it's wasting a year to give Olshey one more year. I mean, I understand why people don't, but
talent is like how people perceive talent is relative on a lot of things that aren't based on the individual player. For example, if CJ doesn't get hurt and we perform really well as a team and win a lot of games, CJ is an all-star this year. And then people can't say, oh, well, we only have one all-star, so the roster sucks. But that wouldn't have necessarily been CJ being a more talented player. It would have been CJ not getting hurt and then the team performing better, say maybe it was better coached, So I don't like using the whole argument like, oh, we only have one all-star on this team, so it's not talented. I don't like using things like all-star games to determine talent. I like to kind of go deeper in that because I feel like it's missing a lot of context. And I feel like when people evaluate this team and how talented the roster is, they miss a lot of context. So that's what I've always tried to provide. I've tried to provide the full picture, and I think this roster is good. I don't necessarily think CJ and Dame are the best fit together, but I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people seem to think. I would be open to trading CJ this offseason. We'll get into that maybe after we talk about the Olshey press conference because that's kind of the main dish, so to say, and then the dessert can be talking about, potential CJ trade stuff since I know you guys love that. That'll be your dessert for tonight. But, I mean, I don't know. It's hard because if you have a coach that's not coaching the team right, it's going to look less talented, So that's the thing is like judging the talent on a basketball team isn't easy because there's a lot of things that you can look at that are dependent on other factors, how coaches vote for the reserves if you're just basing it off all-stars, and how the pieces might not mesh well together. Individually, they might be very talented, but they might not mesh well together. That's obviously a part of roster construction. A player might look worse. Your point about Derrick Jones Jr. was a really good one. Derrick Jones Jr. would seem more talented if he was used correctly, and I don't think he was used correctly. Thing is, he was still a good player. I thought he had a career year shooting the 3 ball, at least until he was kind of benched. Was solid defensively. Our defensive issues weren't because of him. And I thought he had a positive impact on our defense, despite Stotts basically saying he didn't. That guy would seem more talented if we used him consistently throughout the year. If we ran a lot more, he's a transition player. If we used him as a cutter more, if we utilized Nurkic's playmaking more with Derrick Jones Jr. as a lob target, and I feel like he works better in an aggressive defense, and obviously our defense wasn't aggressive. So that's the thing, is like individual talent is relative on a bunch of things that goes outside of the individual players on the team. It's basically a complicated puzzle. So we're changing the coach. We'll get to see, if we have CJ and Dame back, we'll get to see, okay, can these guys truly exist? Because I think they can better complement each other in a better system that isn't predicated on iso ball. I think those two guys would be deadly in an offense that predicated ball movement and that sort of stuff. And I feel like our defense can be better than people think with those two in the backcourt. So that's what we're going to find out with the new head coach.
Yeah, and so I just find it funny that we heard this a lot with Stotts and the defense. Like, well, look at a few years ago when they were ranked 8th defensively. Or, the Western Conference Finals year, they were ranked 16th defensively, right? Which isn't, it's not great, but it's not like terrible or worse than the league type. So those two teams had Dame and CJ playing the same minutes, same roles, all that kind of stuff. But then they say, oh, it's not even possible to have a good defense if those two guys are on your team. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say that CJ means our defense will always suck, but then also say Stotts used to be good at coaching until he got this bad roster, and now he can't coach defense because he doesn't have the pieces to coach them or whatever. So that's part of my problem too, is I just feel like those two would look like so much better defenders in a better system, one that has accountability. That's one thing that Olshey said several times, that he did not feel – he didn't call them out by names. Actually, I don't even think he mentioned CJ by name the entire press conference like other players. But I feel like there was a lot of this in the press conference of saying that it's just weird to me to recognize that Stotts did a bad job, but to not agree with Olshey that this roster is better than 29th on defense, no matter what you think of the personnel. Like Olshey said, we're down there with like rebuilding teams that don't even care about defense or playing any, and some of those teams, like Oklahoma City, were better defensively than us. Like there's no excuse in my mind for that, and I think he's right with that. And I think we heard this on Media Day this year. We heard it on Media Day. Olshey said he needed to be better. That's when he took accountability. A lot of people are saying he didn't take it today, but he did take accountability at the beginning of the year. He also said Stotts needed to be accountable for not, for changing the things that have been wrong in the previous years. And Stotts didn't change any of them, and that's on Stotts. Olshey got him roster pieces with the assumption that those things would be changed to fit the new pieces, and they weren't. And that is why Olshey turned on Stotts, and why he is, in my mind, correct in his assessment when he basically throws Stotts under the bus today for everything that was wrong with this team.
Yeah, here's the thing. The whole quote about... This is the quote that I saw people freaking out at the most. The whole quote about our roster construction is not why we lost the first round series against Denver. Mm-hmm. He said that in response to a question about his job security.
Right.
And to me, it sounded like he was saying that was basically what was told to him. I don't know if he meant to say that as his own, but he was talking kind of in relation to his job security with the team, with ownership, with the front office when he brought up that quote. So I think people might have misinterpreted it. I don't know. But regardless, I don't think the roster construction was the issue for us losing that series. Sure, it could be better. That's the thing, is like, people take him saying that the roster construction is not responsible for us losing in the first round, and they think that means that he thinks he made no mistakes, or he thinks that the roster couldn't have been better. I don't think that's the case. Mm-hmm. I think that he thinks we had a more talented roster, and I do too, and a lot of other people do too. So if we have the more talented roster and we lose, then the roster construction isn't responsible for why we lost. I don't understand why that's such a drastically bad thing to say. I did not understand people's reaction to that. I get how it's kind of like you're throwing Stotts under the bus, but I mean, what do you expect? He fired the head coach. He had a part in firing the head coach. Do you think he's going to fire the head coach and then think, oh yeah, the coach did a great job, but I just fired him for fun? No, like, he fired Stotts for a reason. I didn't expect him to come out here and say, yeah, Denver was the more talented team, because they weren't, so I don't understand why people were getting so freaked out about that quote.
Well, the other thing too, he's not going to come out and say, yeah, I'm trading CJ. He was a bum in the playoffs. Like, we have to trade him. Like, that would do nothing but hurt his trade value, and he can't speak on free agents right now or anything like that. So, I just think, yeah, I mean, what do you want him to say? I mean, he obviously, if you have a job and you're being asked to build something, and someone else is preventing that building or whatever you're doing from looking good, yeah, that would make me mad too. You know what I mean? Like, if I was a GM in his position and I expected Stotts to fix this, Stotts told me he was going to fix the defense and that would be better this year, and we actually ended up being worse than the year before. Mm-hmm. Like, I would be furious if I was in Olshey's position. And this all goes back to the Pelican series. I don't know if this is fact or not. This is all like speculation, but apparently Stotts was going to be fired. Dame went to Paul Allen and saved his job and said, no, please give him another chance or whatever. Then we go to the Western Conference Finals the next year, right? And you can't fire him then, right? Even though he was absolutely terrible in the Western Conference Finals, probably cost us a chance of at least seeing what we could do against a Durant-less Warriors team that year. So Olshey, from that point on, so the next year, he wanted to fire him in 2018. 2019, they go to the Western Conference Finals. They can't fire him. Last year, you have the injury excuse, right? It's hard to blame him. Then you have COVID and all this kind of stuff. So that's how it went last year. And then this year, but going into it, they needed to do better. And I feel like in the offseason, Olshey did his job. He made this team better. You can argue whether he got Dame the right second star or how many All-Stars or All-NBA players he has. That's all fine if you want to argue that. But the truth is, this roster is better, in my opinion, than any roster Dame has had, at least since Aldridge has left. And there is no reason why this team should have lost in the first round to the Denver Nuggets. And you take it from there. And I would be so mad if I put together a roster that I thought was going to fit in with what they thought was going to happen with this team schematically and on the court, rotation-wise, all that kind of stuff. And then Terry just dumps all that and goes back to his old stubborn ways and doesn't get the most out of his talent. And then you look bad as the GM because this team suffered another first-round loss when you felt like you did things to improve the team and got better at several positions. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I understand 100% where Olshey's coming from. And I watched this press conference before I read any of the reaction. And I was like, oh, wow, Olshey had a pretty good press conference. And then I hop on Twitter, Eric. And there was some people that I was surprised to see, say, I don't think his press conference was that bad. And then there's a bunch of people, it was mostly the Pro Stats people, that was just like, why isn't he taking any accountability? Which I thought was a bit ironic considering Stotts is the king of not taking responsibility. I thought Olshey took more accountability in this press conference than Stotts took all year, because I can't remember a single time where Stotts took accountability for anything. Olshey did at one point in this press conference says that he did say that he realized they needed more impact defenders off the bench, not just scorers. Mm-hmm. And I think that was him, it wasn't like taking direct accountability, but I thought that was a way of him taking some accountability. I can't remember Stotts taking any accountability all season long. I mean, we sat here screaming at it. I get why, if somebody thinks Olshey's the main problem, why they would be mad at him not taking accountability for it. It's just funny because, we heard Stotts all year not take accountability for anything. And the people that defended him and defended that are now on Olshey for not taking accountability.
Yep, and just so everyone knows, we're reading chat or trying to. We're not ignoring you. We will get to specific questions at the end. Tori and I just wanted to have a little back and forth before we got into the specific stuff. So
trade stuff will be at the end. Stuff will be at the end.
We will definitely answer or try to answer as many of your questions as we can. But I do want to bring this up since it kind of applies to what we're talking about. So, hello, Brandon. He says, literally every Blazers beat writer outside of state-run NBC were in agreement that Olshey was wildin'. So here's my problem with that statement. Every single one of those people were also the ones giving Tori and I, calling us names, giving us crap the last 2 years, calling all the Fire Stotts people names, telling them they're wilding all the time, and now they're acting just as immature or worse on Twitter. And it's common fact. People love Stotts. That's fine. He's a great guy. People don't like Olshey. They consider him like fake and a jerk, and they might be right. I don't know, but people like to hate Olshey. People like to love Stotts because of the type of people they are or how they come across in their press conferences like this. Stotts always, for the most part, he did get a little bristly the last couple of years. But all these state media, all the Blazers media has been very against Olshey, very pro Stotts for a long time. And so they were not happy. They were not happy with with how this press conference went, and that's understandable if that's your mindset. If you don't like Olshey or you think he should be fired, I know why they do that. But then they just pass off anyone who disagrees as being an apologist, or Dwight James can't think for himself. He just gets fed what to say by Olshey, and now Quick is joining the club too, and all that stuff. But I don't agree with that. I think everyone has their own opinion, and I don't like grouping everyone together like that. So,
yeah, I'm tired of groups. That's part of the reason I like Stotts getting fired. Is just the pro Stotts and anti Stotts sides kind of. That dividing line dissolves with Stotts being gone, because Stotts was the dividing line. Now it's going to be, do you hate Olshey or do you not hate Olshey? It's not even going to be, do you like Olshey or do you dislike Olshey? It's going to be, do you hate Olshey or do you not hate Olshey? It seems like that's kind of how it's going to go. But, yeah, the media and the beat writers have all been aligned on the same level of thinking for years now. It's been like this, where they support Stotts, they defend Stotts, they don't like Olshey. Okay? And almost all of them think that way. All right? We over here have not thought that way, and we've kind of described some of the problems with the coaching, and when you look at that, it played out exactly like we said it would in the playoffs. Didn't matter, we weren't the injured team. Denver was the injured team. We had more talent in the series, and we still lost. It played out exactly like we predicted as far as the coaching, and now Stotts is gone. But those media members that you're talking about, they're still thinking on the same wavelength. They still have their personal opinions towards Stotts and towards Olshey. And I've always said this, it's easier to like Stotts than Olshey. Stotts is an easier personality to like than Neil Olshey's. I get that. I don't disagree with that. I just think people let it affect their judgment of how they're doing their jobs a little bit too much. But the media has always thought on that wavelength, So all of them having an issue with Olshey's press conference today does not surprise me. I don't think there's anything that Olshey could have said where the media wouldn't have had an issue with his press conference. The only way media members were not going to take issue with what Olshey said today is if Olshey came out and said, you know what, it's all my fault. Put me on a spaceship and fly me to the moon. That's the only way the media wouldn't have had an issue with what Olshey said today. So,
but yeah, once again, I mean, they say like, well, he's just trying to keep his job. Like, no crap. Like, he doesn't want to get fired. Like, so of course he's going to tell Jody that it was all Stotts. So, like, I don't think you guys have anything to worry about if you're anti-Olshey, because this is his last chance. Like, that was his last gun in the chamber, right? Like, last bullet in the chamber. So he doesn't have anything else to blame it on now. It's all on him. He has to make the right coaching hire. He has to fix whatever roster issues there are before they become apparent. So if there is a roster issue and he doesn't fix them, he's gone. If it wasn't coaching, like we both believe it was, then he'll be gone because people will question, well, see, Stotts wasn't the problem or whatever. So whether he hires the right coach or not is really important, because if he doesn't hire the right coach, it will show the same, they'll play the same way or whatever, or they might try a different style, but the roster will still seem flawed. And if he hires the right coach, then his roster will look better organically, and then maybe he can get away with not doing much. But I don't think he can get away with just not doing anything this summer either, unless he completely hits like a home run with a coaching hire, and it's like a Nick Nurse or a Popovich or a Spoelstra type influence on this team. So, but I just don't think there's any way Jody can look at this and say, well, you said Stotts was the problem. You got rid of Stotts, and now I have no choice other than to fire you if it goes south from here. So I think, or as Ethan mentioned, Steve Kerr is the perfect example of a team that was not thought of by anyone as a championship roster. They had one All-Star, Steph Curry. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green were not All-Stars until Steve Kerr's first year. He comes in, completely changes the offense to a free-flowing offense where those players get much better quality shots, and they all look amazing. They win 60-plus games. They have 3 All-Stars and win a championship the first year. I'm not comparing the talent on this team to them. I'm just saying that's the influence a coach could possibly have on a team like that. So I'm willing to give him a chance, but if he messes up the coaching hire, I mean, he's done. Like, there's no way he can recover from this. So he has to do well with the coaching hire.
Yeah, 100%. And even if he has a good coaching hire, it's not likely the coach is going to have like the impact of turning this team to like a, top 3-4 team in the league, right? Because I don't think the roster is that good. I think the roster is good enough to be like a borderline contender. I'm higher on the roster than most people. But, that's with the right coach. That's with a really good coach. So he's going to have to make some roster moves, and it sounds like, just based on this press conference, he's as open to training CJ as ever. That was one of my takeaways from this press conference. 4 of our 5 starters we have under contract, right? So that's pretty good. 2 of them are on good contracts, in my opinion. That's Nurkic, and that's Rocco. And then, of course, you got Dame and CJ. And you potentially have the shooting guard replacement for CJ. Because that's the thing in past years. It's like, okay, if we trade CJ, who's the shooting guard replacement going to be? People are like, oh, Gary Trent Jr. Gary Trent Jr. wasn't good defensively this year. And is very inconsistent. Like, Norman Powell is the ideal shooting guard, fit-wise, next to Dame. And I'll disagree with that. I'm not on board the trade CJ train as much as a lot of other people, but I do get why Norman Powell is thought of to be a better fit, because I agree with it. I agree that Norman Powell is better at the 2 than the 3. He's far less undersized. I wouldn't even say he's undersized for a 2. He has a long wingspan, 8 foot, 6.5 standing reach. I think he's an adequate sized 2 guard, and he's a better defender. And he's just as good of a spot-up shooter, at least this year, as CJ McCollum was. So I get all that, So if we're able to retain him, now it becomes a situation where you have your CJ replacement. Even if you can't find a good deal for CJ, I still am kind of curious to see what this starting lineup we ended the year with. I'm kind of curious to see what it looks like under a different coach, but I think it's a situation where, okay, Olshey's going to try and hire the best possible coach, and he's going to be aggressive on the trade market. And isn't that what everybody wants? Everybody wants a new voice, a good coach, and him to be aggressive, him to try and find the best deal possible for CJ. I mean, isn't that what we want? Because I think that was my takeaway from this. That's basically the mindset he's going into this offseason with. He's willing to make any move if it makes the roster better. So it's like, okay, the people that hate Olshey and the people that don't have an issue with Olshey, they both want the same things. They want Olshey to be aggressive on the trade market, and they want the best possible coach. All right? So, yeah, you can parse oh, he said this way, and he said that way, and yada yada. But I think we're all in agreement, and he's in agreement with us that, okay, we need the best coach. We need to be aggressive in terms of upgrading the roster. He also agrees with we need to impact defenders off the bench. Melo and Kanter doesn't work. He basically said that in his press conference today. So I don't understand all the angst and why everybody's worked up, because it sounds like we're all in agreement, and some people just can't get past, the way he said certain things today.
And here's the problem. And he's the king of doing this, so it's kind of his own fault. But it could be that there is not a trade that he could call every single team, and there could be a situation where it just does not make sense to trade CJ. The offers are crap, or it's not the right team, or they can't find a third team to make it work perfectly, or whatever. So there is a chance that CJ could be back. And the problem is, he's just going to get absolutely crushed if that's the case. But I don't know if that's the wrong move if it's just a matter of trading CJ for just the sake of trading him versus actually improving the roster to do so.
Yeah, here's the thing. There are people that are heavily on board the trade CJ train. Is there a trade involving CJ in which they would be unhappy with it because we didn't get back enough? If we trade CJ for a second-round pick, I assume everybody would be unhappy with that, right? Because it almost seems like some people don't care what we get back. They just got to trade CJ no matter what. And I don't agree with that position.
Well, see, this is where I feel like people contradict themselves. So they say, well, we should have traded CJ 2 years ago. Right? And when his value was high, right? But we also went to the Western Conference Finals that year, too. So, we can't have it both ways. We can't say, oh, this roster made it to the Western Conference Finals, but they also should have traded CJ back then or whatever, because he was part of that team and part of that success. So, it's just weird, because that's the argument I've been seeing, is that Olshey waited too long to trade him. I mean, yeah, you probably could have traded him, but everyone goes back to 2017, the Paul George trade, where according to accounts, Olshey was unwilling to include CJ McCollum along with draft picks and stuff to get Paul George in that trade. But people don't remember at the time, CJ was coming off a 50-40-90 season in which he was absolutely phenomenal and on the uprise. No one could have predicted that was he was going to decline from there, at least playmaking wise and his shooting splits and stuff like that. Whereas Paul George had 1 year left on his contract, and it was universally thought he was going to the Lakers after that 1 year. So it didn't end up happening. He was convinced to stay in Oklahoma City, leaves a year after that. But you're basically using hindsight to say we shouldn't have traded a player who was most improved the year before and was 50-40-90, one of the best statistical shooting seasons in Blazer history that year for Paul George, who turned out to have an attitude problem. I mean, the reason why he was being traded from Indiana is because he completely messed that team up with he had an affair with Roy Hibbert's wife. He got a stripper pregnant, all this kind of stuff. And like those are the kind of guys that Olshey is kind of shied away from in the past too. So like, I know that's just one specific example, and there's plenty of others, but like I don't blame him necessarily for doing that year. And then I feel like, the next season we have we get swept by the Pelicans. I felt like that was terrible coaching that year. And then the next year we make the Western Conference Finals. And then the two seasons since, I feel like we just had terrible coaching again. So like I don't know. I get that we should have maybe traded him in hindsight when his value was highest that summer, but I don't get like completely bashing him for not wanting him to trade for a player that he didn't believe would stay in Portland. And we don't even know if he could have contacted Paul George's agent or Kawhi Leonard's agent and found out there was no chance they would be happy here, no chance they would re-sign. OKC could have gotten that same thing from their agent and took the risk anyway, but we don't know what happened in those situations. And from everything I've heard, reporting wise, he tried to get James Harden. And if he tried to get James Harden, CJ had to be included. We're up against the hard tax if we trade for Harden. It would have been impossible unless we included CJ's salary. So if it's true that he tried to get James Harden, he offered CJ along, and it would have been along with other things too. So it doesn't just work CJ for Harden. We would have had to include a lot more in that trade. So it could have just been a situation where Houston wanted nothing to do with CJ's contract or something like that. So I don't get killing him for not trading for all these stars that get available. And then if no star is available that want again this summer, like it's a timing thing, and it sucks to hear that or to keep kicking that down the road. But I just think it's a lot harder to just say, oh, trade CJ and make the roster better than it seems, and he's going to get absolutely killed if he doesn't.
Yeah, here's the thing, all right? Everybody that said to me, oh, if you want to fire Stotts, you have to have a replacement in mind. Here's what I kind of want to sit there and say, if you want to fire Olshey, you got to have a replacement in mind. But, I tweeted that out earlier. I was just kind of joking, poking fun, because I don't think you have to have a replacement in mind, name-wise, in order to want to get rid of Olshey or anyone. But, like, I'll have people tell me, if you want to get rid of Stotts, you have to have a replacement in mind. And they're the same people that go on Twitter and it's just like, trade CJ, trade CJ, trade CJ. Okay, for what? You want to trade CJ, you got to have a return in mind. Like, that applies more to that than just getting rid of the head coach and finding somebody who coaches defense better. You know what I mean? Like, if you're out here saying we got to have a replacement in mind for Stotts, then you got to have a trade package in mind when you say trade CJ. But a lot of people don't. It's just trade CJ. And when it comes to actually like coming up with names, it's like unrealistic stuff or stuff that doesn't work or just pipe dreams, Yeah, I'd love to get Paul George the player in return for CJ McCollum. That's extremely unlikely, especially considering the Clippers won in the first round. You know what I mean? That's the thing, is I feel like people have always thought it's easier for Olshey to get a trade deal done with CJ than it actually has been. And those are the people that are most critical of him because of it. So just everything Eric explained is that's just one deal. There's so many things that go into whether or not to trade for a guy. People say, oh, should have traded him for Kawhi. Kawhi was injured the whole year, wasn't going to stay in Portland, was going to be a one-year rental. Nobody knew if he was even going to be healthy. And who's to say we would have put together a better trade package than Toronto did? We don't know. San Antonio might have wanted to trade him to an Eastern Conference team. There's so many things that go into this.
Also, no one knew if Kawhi was going to report to Toronto when he first got traded. They were like, oh my goodness, why would Toronto trade him there? No one knew if his quad there was rumors that it was legit messed up and he would never be the same player. I mean, those all turned out to be false. And you have to keep in mind, at the time of that trade, Golden State had a fully healthy roster in the West with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Kevin Durant. So to give up what it would have taken to get Kawhi for 1 year where we wouldn't have won the championship if Golden State stays healthy, if you're looking at it like from a realistic point of view, it's just I don't think you could take that risk with Kawhi. And I mean, it would have been awesome. It would have been fun as a fan to see Kawhi. And maybe Dame is the type of person to once you get him in here, maybe things would have been different. Maybe you could have convinced him to stay. We'll never know. But like, it's just not. It's not the smartest business decision to make a risk, and it's super risky. Like I mean, you can say he's playing it safe, but like you don't want to be dumb either. Like, and I don't blame him for not being dumb.
Yeah. So that's the thing is, there's a lot more that goes into the GM than just I don't know, plugging something into the trade machine and making it work. There's so many things, and I'm not saying that people don't realize that. I just feel like some people forget some of the factors that went into potentially trading for a player. Some people think he didn't try when I think he did for Harden. I don't even think that Harden necessarily wanted to come here. I think it's very likely he could have been using us as leverage to get Brooklyn to ante up and make that deal happen for him. There's just so many things that go into it. I don't think Olshey's just sitting there on the beach while his phone rings and he's just not answering. And he's just like, I'll get it next year. No, like the dude is doing his due diligence. The dude is not, I don't think he's against trading CJ for the right package. I just don't think the right things have aligned for him to pull the trigger on a trade that the other GM would be willing to do, because obviously that's a whole nother factor. It takes two sides to make a deal. So I think now this year he's going to be more aggressive than ever in terms of trading CJ, because we have Norman Powell and because this team obviously needs a shakeup. So I don't buy everybody that is sitting there saying CJ isn't getting traded, Olshey loves him more than Dame. I saw that today. That's not the case. I feel like people have kind of misread Olshey on things, and it's not a situation where if CJ's back, I'm killing Olshey for it. I would love to see Dame and CJ play under a new coach, and honestly, here's the thing. If CJ doesn't get traded, we get a new coach. It might work out. We might be able to be good enough defensively. Or it doesn't work out, and at the deadline, there's probably a better trade package available for CJ, because I don't think there's going to be like a ton of super high-level forwards available this summer. So that's the thing. I don't know. I feel like he's kind of gotten a bad rap, and Portland hasn't gotten as much of the benefit of the doubt as he should have.
There is one scenario that after tonight is becoming maybe a little more realistic, and that's the Middleton situation. Mm-hmm. Now, Middleton is someone I did a whole trade talk video on last summer. The years before has always been someone, ideally, I think that would be the perfect CJ trade. We probably have to include a little bit, whether that's another young player or, future first or whatever.
Yeah.
But if they get swept or lose in the first round, it'll take a team like that thinking they need more of a shot creator. They have enough defense at other positions to maybe just change out something there. Mm-hmm. You see, they have Drew Holiday now, so losing Middleton won't affect them like they might have last summer or whatever. So I think maybe an opportunity might present itself like that, or maybe like Philadelphia loses to Atlanta and they're just like mad. I mean, they have the injury excuse with Embiid now, but it's like something like that could happen this summer. And that's something that Tori and I have always been on board with. Middleton is one of the more perfect players for this team. If you traded CJ for Middleton, re-sign Norm, and you have a starting lineup next year of Dame, Norm, I almost said CJ, Dame, Norm, Middleton, Rocco, and Nurk, that is, I don't know if that's championship level depending on the bench, but I would put that lineup against most starting fives in the NBA. You have shooting, you have passing, you have high efficiency wing players who can shoot the ball. You have defenders at pretty much every position. I think Dame would look much better defensively with that lineup and would have to naturally pick up his defense in that. So if that situation presents itself, Olshey will look like a genius no matter who he hires as coach, because I think that roster would be good enough to overcome a lot of coaching things. So I'm hoping for something like that to happen. I want the Bucks to beat the Nets because I don't want the Nets to be rewarded for, forming the team the way they did. But it could benefit us to have something like that happen.
Yeah, there's two guys right now. Middleton's one of them, but there's two guys right now on contending teams or high playoff level teams that it might make sense for both teams to do a CJ swap. One is obviously a CJ swap for Middleton that we'd probably have to add a little value to. The second guy is Tobias Harris in Philadelphia, which maybe we could get a little bit of value back with Tobias Harris. He's not as good of a defender as Middleton, not as good of a playmaker, but he's more of a forward, while Middleton is more of a wing. Tobias Harris can play the 3 or the 4. He's shooting like 39% from 3, 51% from the field this year. Has become a solid defender. He's not great, but he's not bad. He's
basically a bigger CJ.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have the small problem anymore.
I wouldn't say he's a better defender than CJ though. He's a better defender than CJ, and he's not as like ball dominant one-on-one heavy.
Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to judge because I'm basing everything on Stott's system defensively. Where if we traded for Tobias Harris, he would be the guy guarding like the other team's best perimeter player, and that's
we got to reprogram our minds, Eric.
I know it's so hard to think differently. So yeah, I agree. I think. I mean, I would prefer Middleton, obviously. Middleton's a much better player, all-around player. But I think Tobias Harris, that level of player, is more realistic. That might be a trade where you just make a trade and it works out for both teams just to mix it up a little bit. But I don't think Tobias necessarily raises our ceiling.
Well, it creates a better fit, though. You can play Norm at the 2. You can play Tobias with Rocco at the 3 and 4. You wouldn't even necessarily have to designate either one as the small forward or power forward. Rocco could guard the better forward, and you could hide Tobias on the worst forward of an opposing team, and I think Tobias would be just fine doing that. And you could even maybe put Tobias on a 2 and Norman Powell on a 3 if you have a good 3 that's not necessarily like a big small forward. So you have some defensive options in that lineup. I mean, Norman Powell, I feel like might want to play the 2 or the 3, so you might do that trade saying, okay, you can play the 2. We got rid of the guy at the 2. Now you can play the 2. So I think, honestly, at this point, you'd have to do that trade if you're Portland. Like, even if it's just CJ for Tobias straight up, positionally, it makes more sense. Tobias is a little bit younger. His contract's a little bit worse. So, like, if you're able to get back a first-round pick, too, then dope. You know, they have the 28th pick in this year's draft. This is a very deep draft. I think you could potentially get a guy who could be a role player as a rookie, you know, like an Emmanuel Quickly type guy at that spot with how deep this draft is, considering last year's draft was trash. So I know everybody will hate that, but I mean, you had some guys go in the 20s in this last year's draft that have been decent role players on contending teams. So that could be another useful piece to throw in there. But that's kind of like the two realistic targets for a straight up swap is Middleton, which is preferred for sure. Yeah. And then Tobias Harris.
Yeah. I laughed because you reminded me of another thing that Stotts brought up Olshey brought up today that I want to get to later. But so talking about the trades and doing like one-on-one like that, yes, I completely agree. Best case scenario, maybe one of those two guys. But so here's where I get into an issue. So Brandon brings up, at this point, doesn't have to be a star, just a better fit. The theory of 2015 was surround Dame with 4 defenders and at least 3 shooters. Same theory applies. Okay. I can see that point. I can say, yeah, sure. If you trade CJ for a couple of maybe lesser pieces and put them around Dame, maybe that works out. Maybe that's for the better. Maybe those players step up, or maybe Dame is free to handle the ball more. We have a more traditional second unit with an actual backup point guard, yada, yada, yada. However, what are we going to hear all year? Olshey still hasn't gotten Dame a second star, right? That's all we're going to hear. So if you trade CJ for someone who's not at least at least a borderline maybe all-star is like CJ is. Like it doesn't solve the problem with you need more talent to win a championship. You need another star next to Dame or whatever. And it might actually make that harder having two smaller pieces or whatever that aren't necessarily as big of a trade piece as CJ in the future. So I just caution that approach. Like if we're talking about just trading CJ for lesser pieces, thinking the whole is going to be better. Yes, in theory it might make our team better, but I don't think that's what's best if you're strictly saying Olshey needs to make a move to jump this team from first round, second round exit to championship contender.
Yeah. I mean, people would be saying, oh, he waited too long on a CJ trade. He could have traded him for a star. Now he got these guys back. Wow, Olshey sucks. That'll be the narrative. If you say you're going to, you would defend Olshey in that situation, then okay, sure. But there's definitely going to be people that just eviscerate him for it. But, I mean, there's this is kind of the point I was getting at. There's two different constructs for CJ trades going into this offseason. One is the straight-up swap, for Middleton or Tobias Harris. The other is a 3-team deal where you trade CJ to a team that will give up the most assets for him, and then you try and formulate a 3-team trade where you get a good player from another team, right? So say Toronto elects to hit the rebuild button and wants to trade Siakam. Since they're starting to rebuild, they're not going to want CJ McCollum, especially with how packed their backcourt is, right? They would want young assets for Pascal Siakam. So if you could trade CJ to a team like the New York Knicks, who might want a CJ McCollum, and be willing to give up. They got the 19th and 21st picks in this year's draft, and they got Dallas's 2023 first as well. On top of all their own, they got young players. Maybe you can get some picks and or young players back for CJ, send them to Toronto. Maybe you have to attach your own first-round pick if you're Portland to that deal, and maybe you can get a Siakam back. That is kind of the other construct, and that applies to Siakam. If Kawhi leaves and the Clippers want to rebuild, that would likely apply to Paul George. I think there's another name I'm blanking on right now that I can't really remember. But that's the other construct for a deal, is a 3-team trade where you're getting a good player from a team electing to hit the rebuild button.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Toronto does. It's possible they could think they just need to tweak their roster around Siakam and Van Vliet and kind of just fix the pieces around them and don't go full rebuild. But if they do,
Yeah, obviously it's dependent on whether or not teams do it, because they could elect, even if Kawhi leaves, the Clippers could say, oh, we're going to keep Paul George. We don't really have our future picks, so we're going to try and be a French playoff team, and we want Paul George instead of CJ. They could decide that. So obviously it's dependent on what teams decide. It's just possibilities.
What are your thoughts on Porzingis? That's a hot...
No. No.
See,
thank you. No.
Porzingis, in my mind, is one of those players where you got to find what team wants him and then hope that that team doesn't want CJ and that Dallas does. And so it's like CJ to Dallas, Porzingis to this other team, and then we get someone from them, someone who overrates.
Yeah. If he didn't have injury issues, maybe. Statistically, he wasn't bad this year. He played 30 minutes per game. So just using his per 36-minute numbers, just for comparison's sake, he averaged 23.5 points per game, 10 rebounds, a block and a half, shot 54% inside the arc, by far a career high, shot 37.6% behind the arc, 85.5% from the free throw line, true shooting percentage 58%. But from what I've heard, his defense has declined, and now he's like a below average defender, which is the main reason I say no, is his injury issues and how he's a below average defender from all accounts. Now the injuries have kind of slowed him down on that end. So those are the two main reasons I say no to Porzingis.
Yeah, he's, from everything I've seen and heard, he needs to be playing center, and is actually could be decent if he played more like a traditional center on both ends of the court. But he refuses to play center and refuses to play tough inside and all that stuff. So I don't think him and Nurk would fit together. So then you'd have to probably trade Nurk. However, when people say he needs to take a risk, Olshey, like that would be a trade that's a risk. You traded for a guy who was an all-star in the past, who does have skill and a lot of talent and size and all that kind of stuff. So it'd be kind of disingenuous to me if you say you want him to take a huge risk, but you're 100% opposed to him trading like a risk like that, where maybe the guy just needs a change of scenery or something. But yeah, so I mean, I don't want him to trade for Porzingis. It's just kind of funny to me that it's like take a risk or you suck, or wait, don't take that risk.
You gotta take a calculated risk. You can't just throw all caution to the wind and just take any risk. Like you gotta take something where the reward is worth the risk. And Porzingis, the risk is super high. The reward is not high enough to justify it for me. If he was a good defender and was healthy, yeah, it wouldn't be anywhere near as risky, so I'd do it in that case, most likely. But you look at his play, he struggled in the playoffs this year, and I don't want to put too much emphasis on a 7-game sample size, which was the first round of this year's playoffs, especially considering last year's playoffs. He had a good playoff series. He averaged 24 points per game and 31 minutes per game last year in the first round, shooting 52% from the field and 52% from threes. So it's like this could just be a bad... I mean, that was only in 3 games. 7 games this year, struggled. I'm not going to put too much emphasis on that small of a sample size, but if you're trading CJ, you got to be getting back a player that is at least an average defender at their position, in the position they'd play. And Porzingis is below average, and then you have the injuries. So that's just kind of the equation.
Yeah, I think... See, if he wasn't injury prone or didn't have the lack of mobility from some of the injuries, that guy was a good defender in New York. So yeah, I don't know if he's the worst fit. I think offensively you could do a lot of things with him and Dame. But yeah, I don't think you're gonna take a risk on that. And then on top of that, if we're gonna be fair with the Billups situation and the Jason Kidd thing, which is more proven. But the Jason or the Billups situation with the alleged sexual assault. So Porzingis has one of those that's questionable as well. So I don't think that Olshey will just all of a sudden change his mind and trade for a guy with a questionable thing that's happened recently.
Yep. The other name that's gotten brought up is Karl-Anthony Towns, Eric. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to feel about this because obviously offensively he's just insane.
Yeah.
Insane. But he's not a good defender. He's as bad of a defender as CJ is. Mm-hmm. And maybe, like, everybody's like, oh, you can't have 2 bad defenders in the backcourt. Well, I mean, I feel like that's not as bad as having, like, a bad last line of defense at the center position. I'm not sure you can win in today's NBA with a center who is a poor defender. You would have to have 4 really good perimeter defenders around them because you need that center to be able to guard pick and rolls. You need that center to be able to step out on stretch 5s, but then also not get beat. You need that center to protect the rim. Centers are so important defensively. We all, like, Cantor gets on the floor and gets played out of the series. You know what I mean? Part of that was scheme. But it's like, if you have Dame and you have Karl-Anthony Towns and you trade CJ and Nurkic and a bunch of picks, young players for that, are you going to be able to have a good defense? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. If you don't think Dame and CJ work, I don't know how you'd see Dame and Cat working. Like, offensively, maybe it'd be a little bit better, but I mean, I don't even see why offensively it'd be a whole lot better. Like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Then you get in the problem where the Wolves would absolutely not want CJ, so you have to find a third team again. But real quick, shout out to Ian Charles Rose. I said I'd shout him out next time I saw him in chat. He's here, so he said we never shout him out in chat, but then I said he never watches. So, but yeah. Anyways, yeah, Cat's a tough one, but I think worst case scenario, you do it. It doesn't work, and he has a lot more trade value than CJ. So I think you could then maybe trade him for someone that fits better. But yeah, I mean, I don't like trading just to trade someone, but I mean, offensively, we saw when they got a new coach, his playmaking improved a lot. I mean, he was almost like Nurk level playmaker the last few months of the season after they got that new coach. So, I mean, maybe maybe he's coachable a little bit on defense. Maybe you get a Zach Collins healthy enough to play next to him, which I think would be a good combination. And then you have that 1-2 punch there, where with the defensive and offensive one, where Zach isn't like a slouch on offense either. But yeah, it's really tough trading CJ for someone who's just as bad of a defender, but he's just he's so efficient. He's so good on offense as a big man. I think offensively that would be hard for any team to stop, especially in the playoffs. The only other thing I worry about with Cat is his mindset and his work ethic and stuff, since we saw that question by Jimmy Butler, who seems to be a pretty good judge on that kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I get taking the risk there. It's just I feel like Nurkic could be very valuable next season if he stays healthy and if he's under the right coach. I still feel like Nurkic has more value to us than he does to other teams. So it's almost like, yeah, you get an upgrade at the center spot, but it costs CJ to do it. I'd rather just like hope that Nurkic is able to be healthy and like realize his full potential under a better coach, and then get something elsewhere. I feel like that would help the team. Like trading CJ and a pick for Middleton, I feel like would help the team more than CJ and Nurkic for Cat. And it would take more than that to get Cat. So that's kind of where I stand on Karl-Anthony Towns. Wouldn't be mad if they did it. I just feel like it's not the best value. He's the most valuable option on the trade market potentially, but not necessarily to us with how he kind of mesh in with what we got, if that makes sense. I don't know. He's not on the top of my list, basically.
Yeah, and I forgot. I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Yep. Just centers in general, because I saw somebody throw out Miles Turner. I'm a believer in Nurkic.
Well,
if
we want to turn this full circle back to the Olshey interview, so he was specifically asked about Nurkic's role, or what his comments after the game. Let me just say this for the record: Nurk has been right all season. It comes across as like kind of an attitude sometimes, him whininess, like all that kind of stuff. But I mean, he said it when he came back from injury. He said he was sitting there. He thought the team played selfish. They did play selfish.
Yes.
He thought that the schemes needed to change. They did need to change, and that was obvious. He said that the effort and accountability was not there, and that they needed better effort and more accountability. That did not happen. And so he's been right this entire season. So I wouldn't be dismissive of those things. And I think if they do get a coach who lets him discuss those things and maybe say, because we've seen this in the past with Mason Plumlee. For months, it was known that Mason Plumlee went to Terry Stotts and said, please, please, please let me trap. I'm one of the best trapping bigs in the league. Please let me trap. And Stotts was like, nope. He let him do it for one game. It worked great. They did it like half the next game, and Stotts was like, nope, we're going back to drop scheme, and didn't let him trap again the rest of the season. And so how frustrating would that be if you're playing on a team, you know you have good players, and you feel like if you just tweak these little things and played a slightly different way or had a little more effort in these situations, and your coach didn't let you change any of those things, didn't listen to you, didn't like think that you were correct, like he just said you were going rogue and didn't want to do anything about that. I would be so frustrated as a player to watch my team lose to an inferior opponent in the first round of the playoffs, knowing that we had the pieces to play a little differently and those players wanting to do something differently, and it still didn't happen. So I completely side with Nurk in this argument. I think if we have a coach who lets him not like dictate what kind of schemes you run, you don't want to do that, but listens to his input, says like, I feel more comfortable doing this in this situation. And then you say, okay, well, like, how about in this situation you do this, but in this situation I need you to do this, and this is why I don't want you doing that or whatever. Not just, no, you're going rogue, don't do that, you need to drop in this situation or whatever, you know? Mm-hmm. So like, I feel like that's why the coaching importance is so important, because a guy like Nurkic still has the potential to be that borderline or possibly all-star level player if he does have a coach that just understands him and lets him play the way he wants to play and uses him as a playmaker on offense, makes him part of the thing, makes him feel engaged. We talked about that being a key to every single game that he played in this year, pretty much. Is like, get Nurk involved early and he gets engaged. It doesn't even have to be from scoring. He could have like 4 assists in the first quarter and he's super stoked about it. So I think that Nurk, it would just be such a bad idea to trade him, considering there's not a lot of teams that would be like giving us a ton of value back for him. Mm-hmm. But the opportunity for him to develop still and play more consistently, have that get rid of those times where he doesn't feel like he's part of the team or whatever. It was obvious, like the way he talked, he felt like he was unwanted or something, or like the coach didn't like him or didn't like playing him. But then at the same time, like the same coach basically made him have to be the savior of the defense because he didn't fix anything schematically other than, oh, Nurk will come back and save the defense, right? So, and yes, I understand he does need to work on the frustration fouls. He does need to be smarter as a player, but I feel like a coach that taught him properly and allowed him to be himself would unlock some of that.
Yeah, and here's the thing, okay? We need to raise our ceiling as a team to championship level. Mm-hmm. Okay? Maybe maybe we're at maybe a second round level, but we have the potential to reach a championship level. I'd take that, It might be a situation where everything has to go right for us to reach a championship level, but right now it's like our ceiling on this roster, I think, is right below a contender level or a championship level. Mm-hmm. And I think, maybe 1 or 2 right moves and the right coach could raise our ceiling to a championship level. If you trade Nurkic, you're lowering the ceiling of this team, because the ceiling of this team involves Nurkic playing to his true potential. And his true potential, I think, is an all-star caliber big man who's really, really good defensively, who's averaging 5-6 assists per game, who's knocking down threes. I mean, we saw him shoot the 3 ball pretty well this past season, who's finishing decently inside. He's been inconsistent with that. If he figures that out, which I think he can, watch out. He's obviously a great rebounder. So that's the thing. It's like people talk about, oh, you got to take a risk to try and raise the ceiling of this team to give ourselves a chance at a championship. But then some of those people want to trade Nurkic. And if you trade Nurkic, you're lowering the ceiling on this team. We need as many players as possible that have room for growth to help bring this team up to a championship level. So I am not down to trade Nurkic whatsoever because it's going to lower the ceiling on this team. People toss out like Miles Turner and stuff. It's like, I don't see how Miles Turner raises the ceiling of this team. He might be a little bit more reliable. But Nurkic
he's been hurt a lot the last couple seasons too.
Mm-hmm. But like Nurkic's ceiling is higher than him. Like I think Nurkic is a little bit better than him. I think Nurkic's ceiling is higher than his. So that's the thing. We need players with high ceilings. Trading Nurkic lowers the ceiling. So that's why I just won't even consider it.
Turner's better defensively, but Turner doesn't have any of the playmaking abilities or passing abilities that Nurk has, and that can unlock a lot of things. And I just want to bring up another point. You kind of touched upon like ceiling a contender and stuff like that. So when we went into this season, what teams did we think had a legit, like, we put a certain amount of teams in the category of these are the teams, this is the group of teams that will win a championship this year. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what teams they were?
The LA teams, Brooklyn, maybe Milwaukee, any other teams?
I mean, that was pretty much it. You weren't as high on Denver as some people. You can maybe include them if they're healthy. But they lost a lot, so you didn't know. But all those other teams, like some people would say Philly maybe. Some people could say the Boston. Celtics since they made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. But I mean, at the time, Brooklyn didn't have Harden either. So But saltiest, I mean, you can say that now, but you did not think the Suns were going to win a championship before this season started. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but you're a good good night, Brandon. You're a good you're pretty unbiased, I think, when it comes to a lot of that kind of stuff. So the point is, Clippers almost lost in the first round. Lakers did lose in the first round. Mm-hmm. The Nets got Harden, so it's kind of unfair to judge them, I guess. But, Bucks are about to lose in the second round, most likely. Or one of those two teams, the Bucks or the Nets, are going to lose. Philadelphia is in trouble.
Against the freaking Hawks.
Yeah, well, not only that, but even if they do survive, I don't think there's any way they're beating the Nets without Embiid healthy. So... But in the West, I mean, people thought the Jazz were good. People thought the Suns would be better, obviously getting Chris Paul. Mm-hmm. People thought the Blazers, or some people thought the Blazers would be okay. People thought the Warriors would be all right after they trade for Oubre and they have Curry and Draymond Green healthy or whatever. All that stuff. Like, all these teams are going to be out, and it's going to be between the Suns and the Jazz in the West. And so for all those people who say like, Blazers aren't a contending roster, I challenge you to say like why those two teams made it over the hump then and became contending teams and have a chance. One of those two teams is most likely going to go, or the Clippers are still in it, I guess, but they almost lost. But one of those two teams has a chance of making it to the finals this year when no one could have predicted that before the season started. So, yes, Saltiest, we do have people like Charles Barkley betting $100,000 for the Blazers to win the championship or whatever. But, like, crazy people aside, and Homer people, like, there's no reason why you can't just want to see this team perform better and keep on going. And so it kind of drives me crazy when people say, oh, you're stuck in mediocrity. If you just change the coach, it won't help. Well, like the Suns have Monty Williams and the Jazz have Quinn Snyder, who are two really, really good coaches. And I think that those guys absolutely put a mindset into those teams that they could be contenders this year. And they absolutely played like it throughout the season. And that's another thing what I was talking about with like the all-star and the talent looks better. If you go from being a team that's not considered a contender, but then you get a 1 or a 2 seed, then your players get all these accolades because someone has to get credit for it. So you could get the coach of the year. You could get multiple all-star appearances. You could get, a most improved player or stuff like that. So that's when you get awards and accolades and stuff, is having a team like that. And I truly believe a coach can unlock that. A Monty Williams, who has great schemes, who instilled the confidence in that team to believe that they were good enough and not just like throw the ball out there and hope that it is good enough. And so I don't like hearing the question like, well, this team isn't a championship roster. Do you think a different coach would have won the championship? Well, like, it's impossible to answer, but I do believe a better coach could have gotten them for a chance to do so. And I don't know. Damian Lillard, you have a chance against any team if you get that guy open shots. So, like, I don't like to hear, oh, we couldn't have beat this team. Well, the Suns beat the Lakers, and injuries happen. Like I mentioned, the Western Conference Finals in 2019, we played them without Kevin Durant. Like, no one could have predicted that to happen. This year, it is wide open, and I just hate that mindset that people think that you can't get better or you're settling for mediocrity if you think that you just want improved play from this team and see what they can actually do.
Yeah. Really well said. So is there anything left from the press conference that you want to touch on?
Well, in terms of the coaching search, he did have a little blurb at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, you might want to answer Gray Hughes' question. He has a good question for you.
I'm already working on it.
But yeah, so he did mention that I thought this was an interesting dynamic throughout the whole thing. So he kind of threw Dame under the bus at one point, which was he basically said that he does consult Dame on stuff, and Dame has specifically said in the past that he doesn't like to be the person who takes credit or blame for that kind of stuff, because he doesn't want someone who gets traded to say like, well, why did you tell him that it was okay to trade me, dude, or whatever. So I didn't really like that answer. That was one of the few answers I didn't like from the press conference. But at the same time, Dame did throw Olshey under the bus by leaking to Chris Haynes, who he thought should be some of the candidates for a job, and then Olshey gets killed by people for, why would you consider Kidd and Billups? Those guys have checkered past and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I thought that whole dynamic was interesting. I don't know if you want to touch on that for a second.
About the coaching dynamic?
No, about the Dame and Olshey, and just what he said about getting Dame's input and stuff like that. But.
Yeah, it sounded like Dame, like Haynes reported like Dame was making an ultimatum or something, like almost, and it sounded like Dame just tossed out a couple names out there, you know, in a private conversation. It sounds like Dame is like, Dame will give his input, but it's not a situation where like, oh, if you hire a guy I don't like, I'm gone. You know what I mean? I think Dame will be pretty open-minded to this. That's how Olshey made it sound, and Kidd taking his name out of them running makes that even more so the case, So I think Dame's number one guy is Billups. I think Olshey's number one guy is Billups, and I think Billups is the leading candidate, but it sounds like they're going to do a pretty thorough process, and if somebody impresses them more, then that'll be the head coaching hire, which is how it should be.
I do like that that Dame is going to be involved. I mean, I hope he's in on these meetings. I hope that he like is in the interviews asking him pointed questions like, how are you going to use me? What would you do in this situation? Stuff like that. We heard Stott say that in his interview, they didn't even ask him specifics about X's and O's. It was more big picture. So I hope this time they focus more on that kind of stuff. I think the staff is going to be important. But Olshey did say they had a list of like 20 to 25 candidates, but that he did also say, like, why would you guys believe anything like that? We don't leak information. Like, why would I leak the names of the coaches I'm interested in? That does me no good to do that. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, he said it was actually going to be a thorough process. They're not just waiting for someone to be done and then they're going to hire him. They're going to interview a bunch of different diverse things. And I am all for that. Interview 25 coaches. Like, that's great. Then you can get a really good feel on how people answer questions, which ones you liked, which ones you didn't like. Then you can bring back like a handful of ones for a second interview that you thought were particularly good or that said some great things. And I I don't think you have to rush this situation. I mean, if a coach becomes available that you didn't think was, then certainly rush all in and go after him. We see or have heard some things about Butler versus Spoelstra. Maybe that dynamic is, getting a little strenuous there. But short of that happening, I like interviewing as many different types of candidates, and I think that's important too. Don't just go for the same interview guys you interview. Like, do guys with all kinds of different backgrounds, different qualifications, different points of view, different I don't know, but like coaching careers and things like that. Like, interview some young guys, interview some old guys, whatever. Just do enough of a broad search to where you get all the possible candidates.
Yep. Hopefully I answered Gray's question thoroughly, because I know some people might be wondering why we have a second channel and whatnot, and it is kind of complicated. It's just YouTube stuff. Plus, I also like having a second channel just for our twice weekly live streams that you can count on, knowing that it's going to be something different, you know what I mean? Kind of knowing that there's like a different format to how we do this. And it's basically, in the off seasons, it's basically where we stream. And then when we're getting back to doing videos, I did post a mailbag prompt. I want to post a mailbag on Monday. I wanted to wait for the dust to settle with all this stuff so you guys could ask me questions based off it. So during the off season, it's just videos on the main channel outside of big events, because then obviously, like, we're going to stream the draft lottery and the NBA draft, and we'll do like a full draft preview that I have planned on the other channel. Might do it over here. We'll see. I'm not entirely sure. So some stuff is still subject to change. But basically, during the offseason, it's just big event streams are on Blazers Uprise, as well as we do a lot more videos in the offseason. Yeah. And having the second channel, doing our streams over here during the offseason, helps the performance of everything on the main channel. Essentially, it's some complicated stuff, but
it's also nice to have a more what word should I use? A more intimate live stream every once in a while, you know, like there's less people in here, it's less crazy, we can answer questions easier. For the record, we don't ignore anyone on purpose, and we appreciate all of you. I'm sorry, there's part of getting more successful means we have more people watching, and when we're trying to talk about the game, we're trying to break something down or whatever, we try to reach out as best we can, but we're not purposely ignoring anyone. We don't care about anyone's we're not purposely trying to slight anyone by not acknowledging their questions or anything like that. It's just really hard to keep up with that, and I think a lot of you can understand that, and I hope you appreciate that. But for the record, I try to answer every single DM that is ever sent to me. You got like Alex Wolf, who's in chat right now, who messages me like 10 times a day, and I always no, I'm just kidding, man. But we do have good conversations.
Air him out like that, man.
Back and forth. Yeah. So yeah, I do try to answer any DMs. So if you ever feel like something we said or we're not answering your question, or you feel frustrated because you don't have money and you don't feel like you can DM me, or you don't feel like we care about you anymore or anything, even though you're an OG and you never get shout out or anything, or we don't have our conversations about Panda Express like we used to at the end of shows because there was only 20 people. Like those kind of things. Like Tori and I love those things. We love the interaction. We love the community and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want anyone to ever feel like they feel that way. And if you do, please come talk to me. Like, I want to talk to you guys, and I want to interact with you. And for the record, we have 2 Discord channels, one related to the Blazers, one related to more of a fun gaming channel. And it's not even about playing games. Sometimes, like, Tori is like in there almost every night, just in the Discord, chilling with people and talking with people. So we're not trying to be Hollywood or not talk to you or whatever. It's still weird to me that people like even care about me like interacting with them or whatever. But like I I absolutely have no problem interacting with people. Like, I want to know as many of you as possible. You're all important, and like, come kick it with us and play some games, or don't play some games. Just talk with us or ask us questions there, or DM us. Like, I'll always try to interact with you guys, no matter how big this channel gets.
Yeah, if you're interested in joining kind of like our gaming Discord, DM me, because we don't like publish it publicly. If it's somebody I recognize, I'll give you the link for the Discord channel. So just message me, DM me, if you're interested in getting the link for the gaming Discord. Our main Discord's open to anybody and everybody, and that's where we're going to be having the mock off season, so you can kind of follow along with the action in our mock off season in our main Discord, because that's where all that's going to be taking place. But yeah, I echo Eric's sentiments. I mean, there's a lot of streams at the start of streams where I'm like, at least on post-game streams, I'm making graphics, I'm listening to what Eric's saying, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say to what Eric is saying, and what my analysis is going to be while I'm reading stats off and plugging them into Photoshop for graphics. On top of that, chat is moving like a million miles an hour, and I'm trying to like pay attention to that just to kind of like read it as much as I can while doing all that type of stuff. Like, if I don't reply to you, it's not personal. I don't ignore anybody on purpose unless you're asking me like, why I'm holding in a fart or something. I don't know. Weird stuff like that. I ain't gonna answer. You know what I mean? Cause that's been like a joke that I've seen some people say. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I try and answer legit basketball questions. We'll be back to doing mailbags more in the off season, so you can ask your questions there. It's just, yeah. I mean, it was a lot easier when there was 30 people. So if you're like was with us at the start, I know who's with us at the start. And people that are new to us, welcome. Welcome. I love that this channel has grown. We're adding to the community. A lot of cool people that found us in the past, few months. I know some OGs kind of miss when it was 30 people in streams, and we literally read everything off, and it was just different. It was like a smaller community, but we still try our best.
We had a few streams during the pandemic where it was just us talking to Trevin.
Yeah, we had some streams during the pandemic. Literally only Eric. That was like barely over a year ago, where we'd have streams on this second channel and we'd get like 10 people. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's there's that's a downside, I guess, to kind of getting bigger is, it's more people. Like, it's a good thing, but also it's a little harder to, acknowledge everybody in chat and that type of thing. But yeah, it's a good problem to have, I guess. And we do try and make up for it in other ways and do our best.
Yeah, and that's why the Discord gaming thing is so fun, is because, like, I mean, we goof around and play like really stupid games, but it's fun just because, like, we're getting to know each other and just hanging out as a group. And I've stayed up a couple of nights way later than I should in the last couple of weeks, just in there chatting with some people that I've never really talked to before, and it's been really cool. And so Kevin H, I am not the Eric from True Blazer fan, so I was not the one doing the highlights, but Tori was on that channel. He did come from there. Yeah. That was a different Eric, though. I am not affiliated with True Blazer fan.
We had to clear that up a lot at the start. It's been a minute since we've had to clear that one up, but yeah.
Yep.
There's a moth. Why is there a moth in here?
And yeah, there's some OGs that I mean, there's some people that have turned on us and don't like us anymore. And for the record, that is 100% okay. Like, I don't feel slighted if you don't want to watch us. I completely understand. We're not for everyone. A lot of people don't like detailed breakdown. They like just, fan stuff and rooting for the team and things like that. And we had someone today. I'll just put it this way. They said some stuff that wasn't true. We have never said not to watch anyone else. We've just told you, it's actually been the opposite. We've actually told people that don't like us to go watch someone else. So I would never say that that about someone, feel free to go watch whatever programming you want to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might give that programming crap for
Right.
how they cover things and their opinions and how they treat people
Or that
and
person
whatnot.
in particular.
There is one person in particular that I really dislike. Okay, just one person. All right, like honestly, like I have nothing against Chad Duin. I kind of like Chad Duin. Like his opinions annoyed me, and kind of how he went about him, like a year ago was kind of just like But honestly, like I won't even lie, I listen to him now and then, and I used to listen to him a lot, and now I'm back to listening to him more, and that's kind of how I feel like it's going to be now that there's no Stotts, is some people that, I just couldn't stand because they were super pro Stotts and hated me because I was super anti-Stotts, might not have a problem with them anymore, you know what I mean, because Stotts is gone, so there's one guy I have an issue with, but if you want to go watch him, go ahead and go watch him. I really don't care. Like, yeah, I mean that's all I can really say on it. We never said not to watch somebody, so that was part of it. I just got into this deal today. If you're on Twitter, you probably saw it. If you have a problem with me, just message me privately or talk to me privately, and I will do my best to sort things out with you and work things out like that. If you have a problem with me, don't go to a media member and call me out to them and say things like, I told you never to watch them, when the opposite's the case, and just some other stuff, because then I feel like I need to defend myself publicly since you called me out publicly, and then it becomes a situation where then you have people on Twitter kind of going after that person, and I don't want anybody to like send hate towards anybody like on my behalf, So it's just kind of a situation where it just ends up bad if it's like a public thing. If you have an issue with me or anything I do, you can message me privately. Completely fine with that. Absolutely fine with that. And I will try and sort things out because I'm not trying to upset anybody that watches me. I'm trying to do the best job I can. All right. It's kind of, we get into newer and newer territory the more we grow. You know what I mean? We've only been doing this 2 years. All right. We don't have years of media training and that type of stuff. So, yeah, it just seems like there's been a couple things here and there lately that are just popping up, and yeah, I'll try my best. If you have an issue, you can message me privately. Just don't publicly call me out to a media member. That was the issue today, essentially. But hopefully, we're getting that sorted out.
And yes, Destron videos are coming back. Tori
just said that.
Said that he'll have a mailbag next week. And I'm currently working on my off-season primer for the Blazers as well. And then Tori's going to do some graphics for me for that. And so those videos are what are currently being worked on. But yeah, we also have a situation where, I mean, Tori and I were streaming almost every day since December. So it's been pretty crazy with games every other night. These shows still taking place twice a week. We have the Firestart stream, all that stuff. Like, there was a lot of streams in a short amount of time, and we had a lot of viewers, especially towards the end of the season. We go on a run, win 10 out of 12, and then we have the playoffs and stuff like that. Those types of streams get a lot of viewers. And once again, it's nothing personal against anyone. We try our best to interact as much as possible. We want to answer every question. I would appreciate if people understood. So we have this. We can't just tell everyone, and then we have people coming in the middle of a show, and then we'll ask like 8 questions, all stuff we've already talked about. And it's like how do you address that? It's like tough. Like, do we acknowledge it and then answer it really quick, or do we just ignore it, or do we just like say go back and listen to it earlier or whatever? Like, so it's hard knowing what the right thing to do to those situations. And then the problem is every single person reacts differently to how you react to them. So like some people you could say, well, go back and listen to the end of the show, and they'll be like, okay, cool, I'll check that out. And then some people are like, why would you tell me what to do, like, so it can't please everyone. So it's really hard, like, not knowing and just reading text instead of like getting people's reaction or having a conversation. And that's why Discord's so cool, is because you can actually talk to people and like, get to know them as people instead of just like what they type and know their tone and how they're acting behind the text or whatever. But yeah, it has nothing to do with us picking our favorites or only liking talking to certain people. We appreciate everyone equally.
Yep. So we will continue to try our best. Just know we're trying our best. Just remember that we're not trying to ignore anybody or anything, because we truly do appreciate the community.
And like today, we were talking about the Olshey stuff, and people were asking us questions the whole time. And I tried to message several times. I don't know if people saw it, but I was like, please, like, we'll get to your questions. Like, we're not ignoring you. Like, but it's hard when we're trying to have a conversation to like interrupt that for things. But the thing with the donos, this channel doesn't have donos yet. So like, if you don't feel like we pay attention to anything other than donations, like you can come into these shows for now. I don't know if that'll change in the future as we get more viewers or not, but for now it's that way. And then also, like, you have to understand, we need to acknowledge the people who are donating. It doesn't mean we don't like the people who aren't donating. That's fine. We appreciate you watching, even if you don't donate. But like, we have to read those off. We can't just ignore people who are giving us money. That's way worse. So
yeah,
we're not like thinking, we don't have the donation set up or a super chat set up because we want you to have to donate to talk to us, and you're not good enough unless you give us money or anything like that. So please understand that it has nothing to do with only wanting to read people if they give us money. That's not how we operate at all.
Yep, very well said, on a number of different subjects. Hopefully it's not something where we have to reiterate it anytime soon. I wanted to touch on it tonight, and I'll touch on it on stream when we have something go down on Twitter or that type of stuff. And I feel like a lot of people might see some stuff on Twitter and not know what it's about and not know kind of the context to it, and then they watch our streams. So if you're curious what was going on, that's also the reason we're kind of touching on it. But yeah, so that's the
and then also, I mean, even tonight there was 176 people watching. There was 200 at one point. Like,
most we've had on one of these Blazers Up Press live streams.
We can't just sit here and read off everyone's name or say hi. Like, as much I would love to do that. Like, I would love to just have conversations with each and every one of you. I want to acknowledge every single person, but especially in those other streams, like the post game streams. Like, if we just sat there and said hi to everyone, I mean, that would literally take an hour to do, and that would be our whole show, is just us saying hi to people, and I don't think people want that, I think.
Well, it wouldn't be that hard after a while, because people would just leave because they'd be bored.
No one would watch it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, yeah. Anything left to touch on trade-wise or?
Oh, one more thing from the Olshey thing I thought was interesting. He said, when asked about his draft picks or not having a draft pick, he said, "What does it matter? We don't play rookies anyway." Did you catch that part?
Yeah, we don't play rookies anyway.
I think that was a shot at not playing the Seer, in my opinion. Especially the last two seasons. So I thought that was hilarious.
Funny. I was laughing, man.
Because it's so true. It's like,
yeah. The lasting thing is, anything Olshey said today is not going to matter in the long run. So there's no point in making a big deal out of it. If he's a jerk and you think he's a jerk, but then he gets the job done and he's a good jerk, I'll take a good jerk as a GM. You know what I mean? That almost sounded kind of weird. We're going to relapse back to early Blazers Uprise days. Anyway, don't take that out of context. I don't care if he's a jerk or the nicest guy ever. All I care is if he's a good GM. All right? That's what I care about. Yeah. So what he says today, I don't care. I don't care what he says. And I agreed with most of it, too, so I don't know. I'm not tripping. I saw a lot of people tripping about it, but...
I did. So I like that he got asked about Ant and Nas in particular. I mean, his answer for Ant was predictable. He's obviously wants him to blossom and be the star player that he thinks he was a couple years ago. But I do like what he said about Nas. I feel like he thinks he should be in the rotation next year, and I think Nas will actually get a chance to do so. We've seen a lot of players break out in their third year, and I think Nas is primed to help this team as a rotation spot, and not just like a spotty minutes type rotation spot, but actual 20 plus minutes a game rotation player next year. And I think he will do fine in that role. I don't think that's like a failure if he puts him in that role this offseason.
Yeah, I think right now we essentially got 7 rotation players. You got the 4 starters that are under contract next year. That's Dame, CJ, Rocco, Nurk. And then you got Simons, you got Little, and then I think Collins is a shoe-in to come back at this point on like a 1-year deal, probably a qualifying offer. Mm-hmm. And that's a thing, you know. If you get Norman Powell back, that's 8 rotation spots coming back. Now you want to obviously upgrade the lineup, and some of those guys might be going out, but like you have Simons as kind of a backup guard. And Simons improved so much defensively throughout the season. Like, I am completely fine having him play 25 minutes a game next year at both backup guard spots. You know, you'd probably want a guy that could run the point next to him, but, I mean, maybe in a better offense where that moved the ball a little bit better, you could run Simons as the backup point. I think you could do that. In an offense that didn't require like one guy to create so much out of isolation, which usually ended up being Melo or CJ or Simons with the bench unit last year. Mm-hmm. So I'm cool with Simons playing 25 minutes a game next year. Nas, I think, can play either forward spot. And I think in the right system, he has a real chance to really break out. Collins is like a backup center. You know, hopefully he can stay healthy. You want a good third string in case Collins gets hurt. You would want a guy that would be able to step up and play some backup big minutes and be serviceable, kind of like Scow was last season, because I thought Scow was really underrated for us last season, and now he's out of the league. People say, oh, look at that, he's out of the league. He's trash. I thought he was really serviceable for us as a backup center last year. I thought he was solid defensively. It's all on both sides of the floor. But yeah, I mean, you got Collins there. It can be the 4 or the 5. So you're going into this offseason in a pretty decent situation. We got rid of the coach. Hopefully we're going to hire the right guy. That's phenomenal. Okay, phenomenal start. And you got some pieces. You got some things to work with. And if you can bring Norm back, I think this offseason won't necessarily be a failure. Even if they come back next year in the lineup, you know, they just bring Norm back and he's a starting 3, and you got Derrick Jones Jr. in the rotation off the bench with like Ant, Nas, and Collins. Like, I wouldn't say it was a successful offseason by any means, but I wouldn't go into the season like, oh my God, we didn't do anything. Under a new coach, I think that could be a very dangerous team. If guys can grow, if Nurkic can grow to his potential, if Nas can break out and grow to his potential, if Simons can take another step forward, if Dame and CJ can be average defensively, because I think they have it in them. You know what I mean? Like, I think that we're going into this offseason in a pretty good situation right now. I'm optimistic. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and dang it, I lost my train of thought because I thought about Ethan Pettit's question about if we should pursue Nerlens Noel, and I think that would be a decent backup center, depending on what our other needs are. But it'd be nice to have like a defensive-minded, energy type rim runner that's quick-footed and can jump, just as a backup option. But oh man, what were you just talking about?
The rotation, Collins.
Yeah, I don't remember. My bad.
Nas, Simons.
I'm getting so old. I forget stuff sometimes.
I mean, if you went outside Noel, you'd probably have Collins at the 4, Noel at the 5.
Yeah, I think Norm is the key. We've got to re-sign him, or you know, maybe possibly get something for him if he signs somewhere else. But I think they should really try for that. And that's not what I was going to say, but
let me. Yeah, if you
go ahead.
Remember. I mean, I'm down to go through kind of. Last season, I had like my dream off-season idea, right? that like I felt was like realistic enough to not be considered a total pipe dream. Well, obviously it's still unlikely. So I've already come up with my like
and
dream.
You've been getting killed on Twitter.
I've been getting killed. Well, I mean, it's not the Giannis thing. I just threw that out there because Blazer fans were talking about Giannis, and I knew Bucks fans would freak out. You know what I mean?
So there is a slight sliver. I mean, we're talking 0.0001%, right?
Yeah.
But there is a possibility. We've heard that when Paul George re-signed with Oklahoma City, he re-signed with an agreement saying, if I want out at some point a year from now, you have to trade me and I get to kind of dictate the terms of what team I go to or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how true that was, but that's what you heard. So let's say Giannis agreed to sign that Supermax last year with the Bucks. He can't be traded for a year. So the Bucks go all in by trading for Jrue Holiday, hoping to keep him and hoping to do well enough this year to want him to stay. But there is that outside sliver of a chance that Giannis agreed to sign the Supermax with an agreement in place where if it didn't work out in a year or two from now, that they have to accommodate him. And not only trade him, but that he could maybe kind of give him a list of teams or pick a team. And that's where it comes back into play, where the whole Dame and Giannis apparently wanted to team up last summer, and, it didn't work out for them. But, it's super, super, super long shot and all that. But that would be one of those scenarios that could play out where we finally have someone that wants to play with Dame that becomes available.
Well, my trade idea for Giannis was with that in mind. I was literally thinking, like, if that was the case, my whole trade idea was you send CJ to New York. This isn't like my ideal situation. This is more like the pipe dream. You know what I mean? This would obviously be the ideal situation, but obviously not super realistic. But if that was the case, I mean, you send CJ to New York, get back the 19th and 21st picks. You send Rocco to Boston, get back Aaron Nesmith in the 2022 Boston first. And then you send Nesmith, Simons, Nas, the 19th pick, the 21st pick, a 2022 Boston first, a 2022 Portland first, 2024 Portland first, 2026 Portland first, maybe even a 2028 Portland first.
Pick
you get
swaps
back
in between
Giannis.
there too.
Yeah, you're willing to put in pick swaps, whatever. I mean, that's 7 first-round picks, including 2 in a loaded draft in 19th and 21 this year, and you get Nesmith, Simons, and Nas as young pieces. I mean, that's not terrible. If it's a situation where like Giannis can kind of dictate where he goes and wants to go to Portland.
Yeah.
And it's not great. They could find something better, but
yeah.
That's the problem. It's not bad.
If he's just like, trade me
wherever,
and they're just like, okay, we'll take the best offer, I don't think we have a shot. Probably. Maybe an outside shot, but if he specifically has an agreement with them as part of them getting him to sign that Supermax, then and he demands a trade and they want to do right by him because they at least tried it for one more year, that would be the only scenario I'd see something like that working out. And if that is the case, I don't know if you can get much better of a package than that. It kind of sucks for them. They're kind of in the Rockets situation, or the Clippers if they decide to blow it up at some point, where or if Kawhi leaves on his own, where you gave up your whole future for that scenario. So I have a tough time seeing a team like that just pivot to full rebuild. But
if they did,
if they did, I could definitely see Giannis like basically forcing his way to a team like Portland,
because they also save a lot of money in that trade as well. And you just you'd be hoping that by 2026 Portland sucks and their unprotected first is like top 3. That's what you're hoping for if you're Milwaukee, and you're hoping that Nesmith, Simons, Nas pop. But that was kind of like my pipe. That was like my pipe dream idea, is if that's the case with Giannis. But I want to get your thoughts on kind of I want to get your thoughts on if this was our off season, okay? And I want your thoughts too, chat. So Portland and Philadelphia. Portland trades CJ McCollum to Philadelphia. They get back Tobias Harris in the 28th pick. And then Portland sends Rocco, Derrick Jones Jr., and CJ Ellaby to Boston. Boston absorbs those guys with their huge Gordon Hayward traded player exception. They trade Nesmith and their 2022 Boston first for that package. And then you combine Nesmith with the 2022 Boston first with the 28th pick you got from Philadelphia, as well as Portland's 2022 first and 2025 first, and you toss Nas into it and you get back Siakam. And then you kind of like gutted the bench. You'd have to use the ML mid-level exception for a role player. I'd say maybe Nick Batum. And then you got Tobias Harris and Siakam, as well as Norman Powell with the 2. If you could resign them, Lillard and Nurkic, that's the starting lineup. And then you got Simons, Batum, Collins off the bench, maybe another minimum level guy. What would your thoughts be on that offseason?
Certainly be interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's like a horrible trade. Wait, so who's the big money going back to Toronto?
The big money in the trade is Derrick Jones Jr. and Rocco, and you're including Nas and Ellaby in that trade, and it works to match Siakam.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. They could trade CJ for like Harris and then like throw in Rocco, Jones, Nas, Ellaby, and barely match a guy like Siakam.
Yeah.
You couldn't pull it off for Paul George. Paul George makes too much. So it's only certain guys. But like if that was Chris, I'm not sure how much Chris Middleton is making. But I don't know. That's kind of like the dream offseason is you get a good swap for CJ, open up the starting shooting guard spot for Norman Powell, and then you use those assets to try and like upgrade it forward. Mm-hmm. And get like a Pascal Siakam. So then you could upgrade both forward spots, essentially. You slide Powell down to the 2. That's kind of like the dream offseason. That is like super aggressive offseason. Obviously extremely unlikely. That would just kind of be my plan. Yeah. If you could get Chris Middleton for CJ, the problem is you'd have to maybe give up a pick instead of getting one back, which would make it harder to then flip assets for maybe another good player like a Siakam. But if you, I don't know.
If we got Siakam, I think I'd rather have CJ than Tobias.
CJ and Norm at the 3. I'd rather just go big.
Well, Siakam and Harris seems like kind of a weird combo.
I don't see
like
why.
4s, I think. But.
I think Siakam can guard 3s and can handle the ball. Like I think they're fine playing at the forward spots together.
We got Moneyballer99 asking us any way we can get Giannis. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we just talked about it 5 minutes ago.
He might be behind it.
We just talked about it 5 minutes
ago. Just go back like 5-6 minutes or so, and we just talked about it.
But like, yeah, I don't know. So we'll come up with trade ideas and stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you could get Middleton and Siakam somehow, that's obviously just the dream. But I had Tobias Harris because I think Portland might be able to get their 20th pick back with that. Do you think Nesmith, Little, the 20th pick, a 2022 Boston first, a 2022 Portland first, and a 2025 Portland first, as well as like $27 million in savings would be enough if Toronto hit the rebuild button to get Siakam?
Man, I don't know.
That's 4 firsts, Nas and Nesmith.
Yeah.
And $27 million of savings.
That is a lot.
Siakam didn't have the best year last year.
What do you think about... I don't know. It's still... If you could get like Mitchell Robinson, Obi, and like that same pick package, might think that's enough.
For CJ?
For Siakam.
Oh, for Siakam.
Yeah. But that would involve not having Harris then.
But Siakam makes no sense in New York, though.
No, I'm saying for us to trade CJ to New York. I know this is a
Yeah.
different part of the trade because you were trying to do it without or with having CJ for Tobias, but um,
Yeah, I mean, if you're just talking about like a 3-team trade with CJ and trying to get Siakam, then obviously things are a lot easier. You know what I mean? It was just like Siakam's a guy who like Rocco, Derek Jones Jr., Nas, and Ellaby can match. So if you could trade CJ for like a Tobias Harris or maybe a Chris Middleton, then maybe you try and use Rocco, Derek Jones Jr., CJ Ellaby, Nas. Maybe you throw Ant into that and then picks and get like a Siakam. I mean, if you could go into next year with a starting lineup of Lillard, Powell, Middleton, Siakam, and Nurkic, the bench dry ain't gonna be good. But like that starting lineup's insane, and then you just play the buyout market. I mean,
Kyle Wilson says CJ picks for PG-13, then trade for Siakam. I mean, sure, yeah, I'd love.
the problem is you don't have enough picks left over to like make a Siakam trade work without CJ being in the Siakam trade. Right. You know what I mean? You would have enough. I don't think you'd have enough assets left over to trade for Siakam if you trade CG and picks for PG-13. So that's why Tobias was like kind of the guy that worked because you might be able to get a pick back instead of having to give up value, and then you'd have enough assets left over and an additional pick to try and trade for Siakam.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think Jeremy Grant's realistic. Jaylen Brown, I don't think is realistic. And by the way, Moneyballer 99, I was just giving you crap because we had just talked about people who came in and asked questions. It was nothing. I wasn't trying to be like mean or anything. It was just the perfect situation to bring that up. But yeah, so. Oh, and then I just want to say this, Thomas. Are you ever not a troll anymore?
I know, like, dude. Thomas has such good takes and like such good tweets, and now he's just 100% troll all the time.
When
he's
serious, like he's like a fantastic follow on Twitter, but I feel like he's just gone full like troll lately, and it's kind of
disappointing. Honestly, we need less trolls. We need more good follows, man.
Yeah. Love you, man, but yes, that's not it.
I like old Thomas. Where's old Thomas? I miss old Thomas, man.
Mike B asks, is DeRozan unrealistic? Yeah, I think because Tori and I have talked about this in the past. Sign and trades, I think there would maybe be a way to make it work, especially if we traded CJ for like some sort of cap relief, but it'd be really tough to get a free agent in a sign and trade that wouldn't sign for the tax mid-level exception and not go over that hard cap line.
Well, and I wouldn't want to do that anyway because DeMar is not a good defender.
Yeah. I'm just saying,
and he's not a good shooter. Like, he wouldn't be able to play off Dame while CJ can. So, yeah.
Yeah, so basically we have a $6 million trade exception, or not trade exception, mid-level exception. We won't have the full one unless something drastic happened. But, yeah, so I find it hard unless you think we can sign a player for $6 million. Like, Nerlens Noel might be the perfect guy we go after or whatever. But, like, unless you have a guy who will sign for $6 million, it's just going to be really tough to work out a trade that works for us financially.
Yeah. Let me just say this. I don't want to sign a center with our mid-level exception. As cool as Nerlens Noel would be, I'd rather sign a versatile
I just used him as an example. I wasn't saying.
Yeah. Because I want to go into next year with Collins as our backup 5 and then try and have a good third-string big. The perfect third-string center to have would be freaking Harry Giles, but I don't think he's coming back.
I don't know. New coach, if
Olshey
can talk him
I think he'll want a chance to play, though, so if we're bringing it back as the third-string center, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like, Collins is the backup center is ideal. Let's talk on Collins. We need to wrap up this stream soon. We're almost at 2 hours. But do you guys realize how hard it is to find a stretch 5 rim protector that also has the foot speed to maybe switch out onto perimeter players as well? Do you guys realize how hard that is to find? It's insanely hard. That's what Zach Collins is.
Yeah.
And you could have him next year at like $7 million for 1 year. And if he doesn't play, you could I mean, I think he'd have a no trade clause because it's his qualifying offer, but you could try and attach his salary into trades, and it's not money that we could spend anyway. So everybody wants to get rid of Collins. Like, there's no risk to bring him back, even if he doesn't play. The reward is you get a guy who, when healthy, is a stretch 5 rim protector with the foot speed to switch out onto smaller guards. I mean, isn't that perfect for our backup center?
It's tough because if he was just healthy, yes, it's perfect. Like, he would be such a good fit, and I feel like by now, if he doesn't get hurt and he's played the last 2 seasons, I don't think it's crazy to say that people wouldn't be saying we should have taken Bam over him or John Collins or whatever. Like, I think he would have been that good of a fit and exactly what this roster needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do people ask it, like, do you think he's going to be healthy? I think you just bring him back, and it, like, if he's not healthy, he's not healthy. It's money that we can't spend anyway. You know what I mean? So it's not like we're losing out on something by bringing him back. That's the thing. So if he's not healthy, he's not healthy. Okay. If he's healthy, he's a great fit on this team and perfect as a backup 5. So I don't know if he's going to be healthy or not, but that should not be a deterrent from bringing him back. He can play the 4, he can play the 5, he can protect the rim, he can shoot the 3 ball, he has the foot speed to switch out onto forwards. Maybe keep up if he switched onto guards. Like, you bring him back. 1,000%. 1,000%. We should plan for him to be in the rotation next year. Because that's the thing, is like, he's a guy that we can bring back and slot into the rotation without having to use the mid-level exception on. If we let him walk, then it's like we have to fill that spot. While they're filling other spots, all we have is like $6 million in free agent money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. You bring him back, and then you try and fill the 4th spot. We need, like Olshey said, we need impact defenders off the bench. Well, there's one. It's Zach Collins. Use the mid-level exception and sign a second one. Mm-hmm. Maybe like a Nick Batum, who's been good at the 4 this year for the Clippers. Shot the ball really well. Could take some of the playmaking responsibility off of an Anthony Simons. Has history here. You know, he's going to be under a new coach, but has played with Dame before. Has been a good fit here in the past. Like, and you have him as kind of like your other forward. And you slot Nas in. Maybe Nas is the 4, Batum's the 3, or Nas is the 3, Batum's the 4. You got 2, I think, what can be 2 good defenders at the 3 and 4 with Nas and Batum. You got a good defender at the 5. Like, you got good defenders 3 through 5 off the bench. Like, that should be the plan. Is Zach Collins, Nas, and a mid-level exception signing to fill the 3 through 5 spots. And then maybe a minimum contract point guard to play some spot minutes, and then Simons is the main backup guard. I think that should be the plan next year. And that can still be the plan if we trade CJ for like a Tobias Harris, or if we trade CJ for a Middleton. You know what I mean? That should basically be the plan for our bench, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then so Thomas asked if it affects our cap space at all. No, it doesn't.
Because we're over the cap.
Yeah, we'll be over the cap whether he resigns or not. The qualifying offer is a little over $7 million, and so basically you offer it to him. It becomes a restricted free agent. He doesn't have to accept that or decline it immediately. So he goes into free agency, can get offers from other teams. Then that's when we might have the scenario where he signs, say, a 4-year, $30 million contract with some other team that's stupid or something, and we have to decide whether we want to commit to that. So that possibility always remains. With his injury and being that we can match offers and how high that people probably still think Olshey is on him, I would find it hard to believe someone would overpay him that much and for that long. But yeah.
Yep. Anyway, anything left to say for the stream?
I was thinking about this. Man, if anyone has a way to contact Neil Olshey, more than any person on the Blazers, I would love to get a chance to interview him. I don't think he would ever believe that it was anything other than a trap or some sort of setup or something. He probably thinks everyone hates him, and could never have like a logistic or a lot like a nice conversation with someone. But I mean, that's like the one guy I feel like we could ask him good enough questions to get him to like open up a little bit and maybe kind of talk like CBA wise and stuff like that, because we could handle ourselves in a conversation unlike pretty much everyone that was in that Zoom call today. And I would just love to pick his brain about like how he goes about certain things and kind of show off some CBA knowledge as well. And I think we could get him, like, it would be a really cool conversation in an atmosphere that I think he needs to do, like, not necessarily with us, but I think he needs to kind of do more of that stuff to improve his reputation if he's worried about that at all, versus, just having one conference every once in a while where he's really on the defensive and all his answers are, kind of deflecting or whatever. Like, I don't know. I think it would be cool to see him in a more relaxed atmosphere. But yeah, I don't think it'll ever happen. But I was thinking about that today as something that I just throw out there to the universe in case anyone has any way of making that happen. I would love for him to come on, and we wouldn't like railroad him or
we just
like,
gotta tell him we're his biggest defenders in the media. Yeah. Even though according to according to that one guy, we don't cover the team because we don't have access. So we just gotta get that media access so we can say we cover the team, man.
Oh, and once again, to that point, Jason Quick said on the radio this week that he absolutely does not know the CBA, is not very good about X's and O's. He was asked some questions specifically about scheme and then what about like the cap situation moving forward. And he says he does not pay attention to that kind of stuff, so he does not know the answer to that.
Who said that?
He fully admit that it's not his expertise, and that he doesn't really even care too much about that kind of stuff, other than reporting like what people are telling him about those things.
Who said that? Hello? Quick. Okay. Yeah. See, I mean, we've heard that in the past. Like, yeah, the media guys don't really know that type of stuff. So I don't know. We're your number one stop this offseason for that type of stuff because we know the CBA. So anyway, that's gonna wrap up the stream. We went 2 hours for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. This was a pretty fun stream. I enjoyed kicking it with all you. A lot of you in here. Our average watch time is almost our watch time is pretty big. So you guys have been hanging with us for the majority of this stream. It's good to see that. Enjoy it. So I don't know. I'm like stumbling over my words. What was I gonna say? I don't know. I'm having a complete like brain fart right now, man. Follow Eric on Twitter at HoopsJock. Follow me at TorJonesYT. Follow the channel at BlazersUprisYT. Make sure to DM me if you want in the gaming Discord. Jared, I'll get back to you. Mailbag on Wednesday. Prompt is in the community tab of the main channel if you want to ask a question. Our next stream will be Thursday. I have a stream schedule. Okay, that's one thing that I need to remember. I have a stream schedule that I tweeted out to Blazers Uprise's Twitter account. I will post the link to the stream schedule in the chat. There you go. That's the Twitter link that has our stream schedule. Some stuff is subject to change, but that's a pretty solid outline of our stream schedule, as well as like some of the things we're going to be covering on our Blazers Uprise live streams and whatnot. So, yeah. Other than that, anything left to plug, Eric?
No, appreciate everyone for watching. We'll be back on Thursday, and yeah, unless some sort of breaking news happens, we'll always have that covered as well.
Yep.
But thank you, everyone. It's been fun. I appreciate the chat and the back and forth tonight. It's been really cool.
Yep. Sorry, I'm missing the layup with this outro. That wasn't smooth at all. But we're gonna see you later. We're gonna see you on Thursday. Appreciate all y'all joining us tonight. Have a good Tuesday. Have a good Wednesday. We'll catch you Thursday. Unless something big happens. I don't know. Maybe they hire a coach. But it sounds like it's going to be a couple weeks. So
we also heard that about firing stuff. So it happened pretty
yeah, who knows? But it sounds like they're actually going to have a process to that. All you got to do is call them up and say you're fired and Stoss is gone, right? You got to have a whole process to hiring a coach. So I expect that announcement coming in a couple weeks. We will live stream on the main channel whenever a coach is announced. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. We will catch you later. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.